It's shocking how quickly things can unravel in Hollywood, and Rachel Ziegler is learning that the hard way. Just a few years ago, she was celebrated as the industry's next breakout star. Her rise was like something out of a fairy tale, an unknown teenager chosen by Steven Spielberg himself to lead West Side Story. Audiences were enchanted by the idea, a fresh face picked from thousands. She had the look, the voice, the charm. She even won a Golden Globe. Then came the ultimate opportunity. Disney cast her as Snow White, one of the most iconic characters in its entire legacy. That should have sealed her status. The crown, the castle, a guaranteed place in cinematic history. But instead of building her fairy tale, Rachel somehow lit the whole thing on fire. Here's where it all started to go wrong. During press interviews for Snow White, rather than embracing the nostalgic magic that generations grew up with, Rachel went off script. She didn't just distance herself from the 1937 classic, she openly trashed it. She called the prince a stalker, said Snow White wouldn't be saved by a man, and labeled the original story outdated and dumb. Was she trying to sound progressive? Maybe. But there's a fine line between modernizing a classic and disrespecting it, and Disney fans don't take that lightly. Twitter exploded. Reddit lit up. Almost overnight, Rachel went from rising star to the actress who hates Snow White. And it didn't stop there. She threw more fuel on the fire by diving into political controversy during the 2024 election. In an Instagram post, she said she hoped Trump voters would never know peace. Now, regardless of your politics, you have to understand, she works for Disney, a company built on being family-friendly, apolitical, and universally marketable. That kind of public statement? It's corporate poison. The post went viral, for all the wrong reasons. And Disney? Total silence. No defense. No clarification. Nothing. Which, in Hollywood speak, usually means, we're trying to fix this quietly. So what do you do when the internet turns on you, and the film you're starring in gets quietly delayed? In Rachel's case, she tried to redeem herself, not on the big screen this time, but live on stage. She signed on to play Eva Peron in Jamie Lloyd's bold new production of Evita at the London Palladium, a role once owned by legends like Madonna and Patti LuPone. It was meant to be her comeback, a chance to prove she's more than just controversy, that she's genuinely talented. But even that didn't go as planned. The production made a creative choice, bold or bizarre, depending on who you ask, especially with its most iconic number, Don't Cry for Me Argentina, Argentina. Rachel appeared not on stage, but on an actual balcony above the street, singing to the crowd gathered outside the theater. Meanwhile, the people who had paid up to $500 for tickets inside, they were left watching the entire moment on a TV screen. Imagine spending your savings on front row seats, only to experience the performance like you're sitting in your living room. Chaos, confusion, and of course, memes. So many memes. Reviews began to trickle in. Some praised her vocals. Others said her stage presence was magnetic. But it didn't matter. The spotlight had shifted, no longer focused on her talent, but on the drama, the strange creative choices, the viral moments. The attitude. Ticket prices began to nosedive. Some nights, the show was pay what you want. Other nights, completely free. From Disney royalty to makeshift street performances, the whispers grew louder. People weren't just saying Rachel was unlucky anymore. They were calling her difficult. Not the throwing tantrums and storming off set kind of difficult. The quieter, more insidious kind. The type of ego that walks into a room louder than anyone's voice. Reports leaked out. She clashed with directors. Had opinions on everything. Spoke like the most experienced person in the room, even when she wasn't. One crew member allegedly said, "She talks like she's smarter than the story." Another claimed she tried to rewrite Snow White's lines during rehearsals, constantly pushing for updates to fit her own modern vision. And sure, confidence has its place. But in a massive machine like Disney, that kind of resistance from a newcomer, it doesn't fly. The tension wasn't just behind the scenes. The audience noticed something else. Disney was pulling away. Quietly, strategically, posters started vanishing from store shelves. Toys that were supposed to accompany the movie never got released. Marketing budgets dried up. Even at Disneyland, Snow White merchandise featuring Rachel's version began disappearing, like it never existed. And for a film that had already been shot and edited, that's not just a delay, that's a burial. And then came the backlash. Hardcore Disney fans felt betrayed. These were people who grew up with fairy tales, who didn't want politics or modern lectures, they wanted magic. Nostalgia, comfort, What they got instead felt like mockery. One Reddit user said it best: "She acts like she's too good for the role. Like she's embarrassed to be Snow White." And when a fan base turns on you that completely, winning them back is almost impossible. Every quote she gave just poured more gasoline on the fire. Every clarification only made things worse. And once the internet starts digging, it doesn't stop. Her past performances were suddenly under a microscope. Her breakout in West Side Story, once praised, now re-examined. People pointed out the film flopped at the box office, despite critical acclaim. Then came Shazam 2, a movie that barely made a dent, and certainly didn't help her image. Her performance didn't save it. It barely registered. The rising star with limitless promise was now being called box office poison. And as for Evita, the show quickly went from buzzy to embarrassing. Audiences didn't just walk out, they never showed up in the first place. Once packed houses now faced rows of empty seats. Discounted tickets became the norm. One night, tickets were literally offered for whatever you could afford, whatever change you had in your pocket. It wasn't about talent anymore, it was about brand damage. And Rachel's name wasn't drawing crowds. It was chasing them away. Behind the scenes, insiders didn't hold back. One source bluntly admitted that producers regretted casting her but felt too far in to back out. Another claimed the original vision of Evita had to be rewritten just to accommodate Rachel's creative direction. If that's true, then it wasn't just her performance under scrutiny, it was the ripple effect she had on everyone else's work. Some said she was surrounded by yes men. Others believed she was simply too young to handle the pressure. Either way, the damage was done. And the saddest part, none of it would have mattered if audiences loved her. But they didn't. Or rather, they didn't know how to. Was she a rising star? An activist? A performer? A provocateur? Her public image kept shifting, her messaging kept changing, and fans were exhausted trying to keep up. So, they did what audiences always do when they're confused: they checked out. Quietly, coldly, completely. Whispers started among producers. Contingency plans. Quiet exits. Some began cutting ties. Others hesitated, waiting for public sentiment to change. But it never did. Theaters stayed empty. Online opinion stayed harsh. And Rachel's name? It wasn't trending for her talent anymore. It was trending for all the wrong reasons. Even her early supporters, the ones who once hailed her as a fresh face, a modern icon, had begun to go silent. Not because she lacked talent. That was never the issue. She could sing. She could act. Critics agreed on that. But in Hollywood, skill isn't always the currency that matters most. It's perception. It's timing. It's knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. And Rachel, whether because of poor advice or sheer stubbornness, kept speaking when silence would have served her better. The more she talked, the more she insisted, the more the audience pulled away. Studios noticed. They began testing trailers and posters without her name. One insider revealed they were measuring engagement without the baggage. That's Hollywood Code 4. She's become a liability. Snow White was supposed to be a guaranteed hit, a nostalgic billion-dollar machine. Instead, it was being restructured in real time, not to showcase its star, but to minimize her. Postponements turned to silence. Buzz turned into anxiety. The once hyped film became a question mark no one wanted to answer. And Rachel? She had somehow become the face of a project no one wanted to be the face of. It was never meant to be this way. She had everything. Spielberg, a Golden Globe, Disney, Broadway, a resume built to launch her into superstardom. But Hollywood doesn't just run on talent. It runs on timing, optics, audience loyalty. And Rachel Ziegler, once destined to wear the crown, now finds herself outside the castle gates. Superstardom was within reach. But in Hollywood, sometimes all it takes is the wrong quote at the wrong time to send everything into free fall. And in Rachel Ziegler's case, it wasn't just one quote. It was a pattern, a series of missteps, tone-deaf moments, and an inability to read the room. She wasn't just battling critics. She was fighting audiences, studios, and her own carefully crafted public image. Behind the scenes, a new term started circulating: Hollywood jail. It's not cancellation, it's silence. You're not blacklisted, but no one's calling. The doors don't slam shut, they just quietly stop opening. And that's exactly where Rachel found herself. Too famous to vanish, too controversial to sell. Her name didn't generate excitement, it sparked debate. Her face on a poster didn't invite applause, it caused hesitation. That's the danger of burning too bright, too fast. People confuse early applause with invincibility. But fame isn't just about talent, it's about trust. The audience has to believe in you. They have to like you. They have to root for you. Rachel lost that. Maybe it was the interviews. Maybe it was the Instagram posts. Maybe it was just the energy she gave off. But something didn't connect, and once the crowd turns on you, it's nearly impossible to win them back. Now, no one's asking what she's starring in next. They are asking whether she'll ever get another shot. Studios are hesitant. Directors are cautious. Audiences have already moved on. The fairy tale flipped. The spotlight faded. The magic wore off. She's not being booed. She's not being celebrated. She's just being ignored. And in Hollywood, that's worse than hate. So, what's next for Rachel Ziegler? Maybe she steps away, lays low, rebuilds in silence. Maybe she reinvents herself and turns this chaos into a comeback story. But whatever path she takes, one thing's certain, she's not Snow White anymore. And the next chapter, that's going to take a lot more than a pretty dress and a good song. It's going to take humility, strategy, and a whole lot of earned forgiveness.